Hi, everybody. Wow. Okay, I've got to change this view. Hi, everybody. Hi, Turb Live. Hey, okay, I'm going to be right there. Let me just make sure I have all of my little things. I'm going to need a pen and a paper. Does everybody have a pen and a paper? We're going to be drawing some Enneagrams. The Enneagram is that new little S symbol. Y'all are going to be doodling this on every contraption that you can find. All right, is there anything else I need to care? I'm going to turn these lights on. All right, and I'm going to do one of my favorite things to save time, and that is say a little prayer first before I get started, because when I don't do this, when I don't pray first and say, okay, please let me speak this clearly, please, whatever is meant to come through, let it come through, I end up having to go back and watch the video and be like, did I miss a spot? Did I do it all right? And that's really exhausting. Let me just hang on. I don't have a pen yet. Let me just grab a pen. One sec. Hey, Daddy. All right, I got it. I got a Sharpie. Even better. All right, so there is one true God at the source of all religions, at the source of all knowledge, at the source of all mysteries, at the source of all knowing. There is one true God. And all of us have arrived here today to grow in some way. Each one of us came here with a different intention, with a different life story. No one's story matches exactly someone else's. But for whatever reason, we've all arrived here today in this moment to learn this sacred teaching, to learn this beautiful symbol. And I ask that I can transmit this message freely without any obstructions by my personality or my insecurity. I ask that I don't start to freak out about all the things that I don't know, all of the things that I've never put to the Enneagram before, and that we can work together like a class, not me teaching others, this is the way and this is how to do it, but all of us learning and growing together and bringing new aspects to this field of consciousness. Please let me speak this clearly. All right, so that's that. I have gotten one. This is not like your typical launch call. My thing with teaching and with launching now is like, I'll just get you guys into it. And if you want to continue, great, but I don't really do good having like a couple, like it's like split personalities, right? Like, let me be in launching mode and then let me switch into teaching mode. I'd rather just teach you guys the whole way through. And if you vibe with it, great. If you don't, great. This is an obscure spiritual teaching, like literally hardly anybody. It's really hard to find in the fourth way people that teach the Enneagram, not in its personality form. And the Enneagram of personality came from this. It was like certain students of Gurdjieff that were like, wow, when we use the Enneagram with the planetary system, we find that each point connects to a different planet. And so that's where the Enneagram of personality came from, because like everybody that is Martian in some way, people that are ruled by Mars are going to be very volatile, very hot and cold. Everybody that's ruled by Jupiter is going to be Jovi. They're going to be jovial. They're going to be exciting. They're going to be expansive. They're going to make everything a party wherever they go. People that are mercurial, that are coming from the planet Mercury, are going to be like Geminis. You know, they have these different sides. They're not just like temperamental like a Martian, but they actually are like totally different people. The nature of Mercury is to be like liquid and solid at the same time. Mercury is also called quicksilver. So like a liquid metal, just the concept of it alone is like, what? So that's where the Enneagram of personality comes from. But the Enneagram, it's a mathematical system for understanding how creation works. And it's how to create anything. So the way that this relates to magic is that a lot of it, magic, manifesting, went to accomplish the impossible. we have something that seems impossible for us to accomplish, and we just want to know the steps of how to get there. Now, some people say you can manifest. Some people, if you get into like deeper magic, there's all kinds of complicated rituals that you can do. And my personal path is one where I can't stand flair. I can't stand clutter, like altars and like upkeep and stuff like that. Like I always want to take things apart, find the commonalities in it. Like I want to take apart every single biscuit recipe and find what ingredients every single biscuit recipe has, and then understand that if I just add these ingredients together, it'll technically be a biscuit. I can't fuck it up, but I can add or subtract as much flair as I want from that. My spiritual practice began like after my spiritual journey, where it became a full-time thing, began after my fiance died, because I just had seen the future and I couldn't ignore it anymore. But I was backpacking. I had started my backpacking journey with like 5 books, including A Course in Miracles, The Prosperous Coach by Rich Litvin, The Tao Te Ching, and The Women Who Run with Wolves, paperback copies of all of these. And just my education alone was so heavy to carry around in my backpack that I was like, I need a simpler way. I really wanted to do YouTube videos, but I couldn't, at the time, I couldn't stand like video editing. And so I devoted all of my time to doing my best to edit my mind so that I could just speak freely without having to go back and edit my videos. So however my process comes around, it's usually with the desire to like heavily simplify things. I say, this is so complicated. Solomonic magic is so complicated. The fucking Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is so complicated. So many levels that you have to go through. Isn't there just a way that we can simplify this? And so when I first met, I saw the Enneagram for the first time when I went to see a psychic for the first time, who became my teacher for a few years. His name is TCI Zell, and he's based out of New York. Really cool guy. But I saw this symbol and I was just like, oh, wow, like this is beautiful. But I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what the name of it was. And it never came up where I could ask him about it. I usually like booked my readings with him in SOS mode. And so I forgot to ask the question to the Enneagram on my way out. But I never knew how to draw the symbol. I didn't know what it was called. And then after many years, when I finally was introduced to the 4th way, I had started hearing this name, Gurdjieff. If I had seen it written, I was like, I don't know who this person is, but like Osho was talking about him. And I was like, like, who is this person? And I tried to read some of his books, but it made no sense to me. And that's because I didn't understand that these 2nd level teachings are orally passed on. So you just need to hear somebody speaking it in a contemporary language. And then the code opens up for you and all the books make sense and it's beautiful. There's like, if all I do is introduce you and open up the portal to this new world like that, then my mission is complete. You can't repay a teacher in 10,000 lifetimes. I will literally like always be grateful for the woman who opened this door for me, because I was just so frustrated. I'd become as frustrated with the spiritual industry as I had been with regular life. I was like, is this it? I was like so sick of being in conversation with everybody nodding their heads and be like, yeah, you've got like good energy, you just have to like manifest it. Let's manifest it together. I was like, is this it? Because I want to be like, my son is named after the poet Rainer Maria Rilke. And the way that Rilke talks about God is why I named my son after him. He introduced me to this concept of God that you could be in love with, but not in love with the way that Hollywood portrays being in love, but in love like the way that I always wanted to be in love, which is just feeling like you'll never get to the bottom of somebody. Like you'll always, that like after all of those years, you'll still wonder, oh, like I wonder where they got that scar, where they'll tell you something that you're like, I never knew that about you. And I didn't have a language for it at the time, but that's what an erotic relationship is. Erotic relationship is one that's constantly becoming new over and over, so that your new desires are met in the same relationship, as opposed to new desires, new relationship, which would be an intimate relationship, is when the partner meets all of your desires, but when you have new desires, they can't catch up. That's the difference between intimacy and eroticism. So I wanted to have a relationship with God and with my spiritual practice that felt like I would never get to the bottom of it. A really good metaphor for understanding the difference between intimacy and eroticism. Who's here has seen Beauty and the Beast, the classic Beauty and the Beast? So in the beginning, Belle's in the bookstore and it's a beanstalk and a boy named Jack. He goes, Belle, you've read this book 100 times. And she goes, I know, but I just love it. I've read it cover to cover. There's this and that. And I love this. So that vibe, that holding the book, that's intimacy. But then think of her face when the beast opens up the library and she goes in and goes, this is more books than I could ever read in my life. That's the feeling, that's the taste that I wanted to have with spirituality. And I just was not getting that in the conversation anymore. And I was starting to I was like, maybe I need to find something new. So if you're at this stage, you found yourself at this stage where it's like, is this it? Like, is this it that people are talking about? Is this it, like a positive mental attitude and manifesting? Is this literally it? Congratulations. Like, you are here to wake up. Not everybody is here to wake up. And consciousness is like a bottle of Fireball and a full bar. If everybody, and you got one bottle of liquor, if everybody wants a little shot of Fireball, nobody's going to get drunk. But if you have 90% of the bar being like, no, no, thanks, not for me. Ew, get this away from me. Like, nah, I'm rejecting it. We can get twatted down at the end of the bar. I'm telling you, 3-4 of us, one bottle of liquor. Like, so not everybody incarnated to wake up. And not everybody is asking these kinds of questions, but seek and ye shall find. And if you have found yourself here to this conversation, like, you are here to wake up. You are here to do huge, enormous things, because I'm here as an intermediary between present day you and future you. This is how second level teachings arrive to you. They call this in the fourth way, like person A. Person A is asking quantum questions like, is there more? Sets you apart from the rest of the crowd. Continuing asking these questions starts to build something in you that they call in the fourth way magnetic center. It's an actual property. In the fourth way, everything is weighed, measured, calculated, no trust. You test it. You don't believe anything I say, you test it. We test the math. We test it. It works for you, it works. It doesn't work for you, keep looking until you make sense of it. Keep testing it, but don't ever just trust something that a teacher's said. Almost go about trying to prove your teacher wrong, but do so quietly in the beginning, because I have found that with fourth way, sometimes it takes a couple years for me, my hard head, for it to click, but sometimes I have found out that they were right. I don't know if any of you guys saw, there's like a clip of Kanye from 2013 where like Sway is telling him like, you should cut out Gap and Adidas and just make your own shoes. And he's like, you don't know the answer. You don't know the answer. Like literally like screaming at him. And now 10 years later, he's like, he did actually have the answer. So if you have a tendency to reject things as quickly as I do so quietly, because I've fucking made an ass out of myself, and I'm probably still making an ass out of myself and haven't caught up to it yet. But person number A, that starts to crystallize into something called magnetic center, and magnetic center communicates with person C, which is you at the third level, you in direct contact with source. You as a direct expression of God. There's no intermediary. And you say like, oh, couldn't I just do this right now? You could if you didn't have a mind, but learning how to put the mind in its right place is achieving enlightenment. So yes, you could definitely be this person now. You've had glimpses of it on psychedelics, I'm sure. But to get there and stay there, as opposed to getting there on psychedelics and not being able to find your way back, that's the difference between an achieved result and something that you've tasted and ultimately don't really understand. So person A asks quantum questions, develops magnetic center. Person C you in the future sends backwards in time these B influences to help you get to where it is that you're trying to go. So you wouldn't be exposed to B influences if you weren't meant to go the long way on your spiritual journey. So congratulations. This is the open door, but it goes for miles. And I hope that you can see this opening of a new path, not as something like, fuck, I'm so far away, but like Belle in Beauty and the Beast being like, this is more than I could ever know in my whole lifetime, but I'm literally never going to be bored again, because if I'm ever bored and I don't know what to do, like there is something I can do. There is something I can test. There's something that I can study. There's a book that I can pick up. There's a lecture that I can listen to, which is for me so much sweeter than shuffling around the same stacks of books on manifesting. So that's how I came. I hired a fourth way teacher to help me understand the Enneagram, but I was really disappointed when she didn't know. And it's not any fault of hers. Like, as you interact with more fourth way teachers, you know, this might've been the first time you've ever heard of fourth way or mesoteric teachings in general. But everybody kind of picks up something different, and that is their thing. My thing is simplifying all systems. So the spiritual title I received from one great teacher was Master of All Systems. Like, that's you. I make systems through a lot of trial and error, but when I find I'm like an inventor. Like, I will find what works. I will fail a million times. I've failed on the Enneagrams a million times figuring out how it works. But once it works not just for me, but it works for everybody. And I'm also able to save people a lot of time, because I'll be like, don't go down that path. And they said, well, I'm going to go down it anyway. And I say, okay, well, do me a favor. If you go down that path and 2 steps into it, you see this scary thing, don't ignore it, turn around and go back, because you'll know that I was right. And if you ignore me and go past, you'll see 2 more steps down, a scary monster that looks like this, at which point I don't just tell people don't try something. I have the ability to prevent people by pointing out specific milestones and flawed logic, so that they don't have to go all the way to the bottom and publicly fail the way that I have. And luckily, because I've failed so many times, people are able to turn the ship around before getting all the way to the bottom. But that's what I do. Some people from fourth way are really focused on like the movements. Yes, there's this principle that if you use, there's laws that govern Earth. There's laws that govern the moon, the planets, all the way up. We talked about this in the book. When you use your body to physically demonstrate a law in action, you master it. And when you master a law, it doesn't master you anymore. Freedom, doing a miracle. Like, if I demonstrate something on Earth, 48 laws, that only takes me 46 laws to do, you're going to call that a miracle. If I do something that demonstrates only 47 laws, 40 in a world of 48 laws, you're going to call it a miracle, because every time you get out. And let me give you a super simple example of this. The law of accident is like the easiest one to crawl out of. People that do Wheels Reinvented and reconcile their traumas come out from the law of accident. Now, somebody that's living under the law of accident will go through an airport to rushing to catch his flight. Everything is kind of going against him, but he pushes through. He spills his coffee, but by the skin of his teeth, he makes it on the plane, which then crashes. And he dies. Now, somebody that's not living under the law of accident will spill their coffee and say, I'm not going to leave this. I'm going to clean it up, even if it means I'm missing my flight, because I have like this weird little feeling that I should stay behind, and ends up missing the flight, getting put on a later one 2 hours later, but narrowly avoids a plane crash. And everybody goes, that's a miracle. Like, that's a miracle that you didn't get on that plane. And it's like, miracles and magic are like the same thing. But when I first started, I was on a plane going to Bangkok, one-way ticket. It wasn't crashing, but I sure was. My fiance had just died. I had never been on a trip by myself before. I had basically no money. I was reading The Prosperous Coach by Rich Litvin, and in it was a quote by Penn Jillette, who's Penn and Teller, the creepy magic guys. But Penn Jillette said, magic is just spending more time on something than anyone else would reasonably expect. And I thought about all the things in my life that I wanted to be good at, which were like twerking, business, being a good mom, understanding why my life had to be painful. And I realized in that moment on that plane that if I just kept practicing, if I just kept working at it, then it would eventually reveal itself to me. And I feel like I like surrendered to my process with that quote. Is like, nobody's out there doing magic. They're just spending way more time working on something than anyone else would reasonably expect. So when we work the Enneagram together, like it's gonna be hard at first. You're gonna have brain wrinkles at first, you know? It'll be like, am I moving forward? Is this working? But it will. We'll just be spending more time on it than anybody else would reasonably expect. And when you're done, for all creations, whether it's something that seems mundane, like finding my next career, or something that seems huge, like, I don't know, getting my next house. I'm not even going to use the word manifesting, because I tried manifesting a house for 2 years and it turns out you actually just have to do that. That you just have to spend more time on it than anybody else would reasonably expect. I forgot. But I really thought it was, I was like, I get this thing where I'm like, but I'm good looking and spiritual. Like the combination of these two has to like open doors for me. And so I'm like very resistant to the cold hard facts of it. But everybody from Fourth Way will pick up a different thing. And I'm the only living teacher that I know of right now that has become as obsessive about the Enneagram as I have. There's really only 2 other in-print teachers that I know of who have taken the Enneagram and explained it. And those 2 teachers would be P.D. Uspensky, who was like one of the main teachers of Fourth Way, and J.G. Bennett, who is another, and they're both cool. Fourth Way has many different voices. So find the person that speaks your language. And if that person is me, I'm so stoked because now you get to be my baby. So the main question that I've got from everybody on how to do on if they can use an Enneagram or not, is that they don't have a goal. They're like, okay, so this all seems really interesting, but I don't have a goal. I don't have a first thing to put to this Enneagram. So I figured that even though I've never done this particular one before, that we'd work through it together. But first, before I do that, I wanted to let you guys know what you're all here for. I told you in the book, so we have the 3 points, and each point is all significant for something. So in the book, we talked about how the 0/9 point, because everything begins and ends up here. So it starts with 0 and then it becomes 9. Enneagram 9. That's always the cycling force. This is always the setting. This is always what neutralizes the apparent conflict between what you want and what's standing in your way. This is always the aspect that relates to God, that relates to timing, that relates to, because it neutralizes the conflict. And it's mechanical for us. And that's what we're here to learn, is to like overcome our mechanical thinking and actually become free people. Like everything that you do, no offense, but like everything that you do is robotic. You don't control your body and your mind. Like you wake up in the morning, you say, okay, today I'm going to fast. And then 5 minutes later, you say, oh, we could go out for pizza. And you say, and I'm absolutely not going to text this guy today. And I'm most definitely not going to pick my face. And then before you know it, you're on autopilot, picking your face in the fucking mirror. And then you're crafting the text message that you're going to send to the person. This isn't your fault, but you have so many different yous in your head. And the first stage of enlightenment is like getting rid of all of those so that you can hear the voice of your soul clearly. And your soul has no likes and dislikes. Your soul is always in that space of the third force, observing and saying, this is what is. but like everything, the whole purpose of like manifesting and like making your will manifest and is usually just stuck in this world of conflict of where you really want to do something and something's standing in your way. And you're like, can't I just manifest the obstacle, like leaving the scene? And you can't, because there's always a third force that makes you not want to get rid of that obstacle in the first place. So the 0.9 point is always, always, always what's cycling. Then over here on the left hand, on the right hand side of the triangle, we have what's always the 3 point, and the 3 point is always the passive principle. The 3 point is always the thing that's going to need to be burned up, that's going to need to be transformed. Let me tell my husband to remove these children. I cannot work with the fucking. Thank you. Let me just write down in my little book that my husband had attitude when I that he had attitude when I told him to get those kids downstairs so I can make sure to fucking charge him for it later. So the 3 force is always what needs to be passive and is always what needs to be burned up, transformed. Now, transformed means if I take a raw steak and transform it into a cooked steak, there is no going back for that steak. Okay. So whatever, and what's really important, and it's the reason why when we do this workshop together, why we take 3 weeks at this point and 3 weeks at the next point, is that whatever used to be active in your life, like let's say, for example, you're doing the Enneagram of stepping into your role as a teacher. What used to be active for you is this concept of yourself that I can't do it, who am I to teach? And we need to set that passive, meaning that this is no longer something that you are presenting to the world. Your insecurity is no longer presenting to the world. And we're going to burn it up. We're going to burn it up. And you know what that might mean? Dude, I guarantee you shit is going to hit the fan at 0.3 straight up. Shit is also going to hit the fan at 0.6. Shit is also going to hit the fan right before we get to 0.9. And we'll explain, if we have time today, we'll explain about why that works, but we could really be here for a long time. So I'm going to try and keep everything on target. It can be really uncomfortable. Like, let's say if you need to burn up that negative self-concept, you can expect everybody in your life that makes you feel like you'll always just be the you that you are right now, that who are you to teach? You don't know anything, be quiet. Rest assured that all of these relationships are going to come up at that point for you, because at this point, you are going to have to make a decision. I am going forward through the difficulty. The difficulty, like we talked about in the book, it's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that progress is being made. Now, if you know that this is coming, because when I first got into the Enneagram, I was like, if I'm doing all of this every time I create, like, do I actually need to know the steps? And the thing is that I was giving up on a lot of creations because I didn't know the steps. And a lot of my creations weren't succeeding because even if I had the steps, I didn't know how to go forward and backwards in time, which is what we'll be talking about in class 2 of the Enneagram. But shit gets really hard at these points. And if you know it, then you can continue. You can be like, all right, well, independent of the opinions of others, I proceed. Even though this is really hard, I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to forget my mission here. And that's really the only problem in life, is like forgetting your mission. When you remember that you have a mission, life stops being this thing that happens to you and it becomes school. And you say, okay, like, how can I grow here? How is this helping me grow? And it stops being this whole conflict. But when you forget that you have a mission, the second things get hard, you say, oh my God, I'm bipolar. I had no idea. My friends are concerned about me. Time for me to make a fucking U-turn and go back to being the version of myself that they were comfortable with, even if I have to fake it for the rest of my life. They know me better than I know me. They say to me, I'm not a teacher. I'm crazy to have ever thought this. I'm like, that's really damaging. It can be really hard to come back from some of these things. When you set out to do something and you reach that denying force, not realizing that this is a symptom of growth, it's like getting spanked publicly and sent back to square one with your tail between your legs. And maybe you guys are more resilient than me, but like that was like a big blow to my self-esteem. When I started like outgrowing friends, I was like, am I fucking crazy? All of these people that used to love me, as long as I sat in a bar drinking with them, are saying that they don't like me anymore. Surely I'm doing something wrong. And so when you know that these things are coming, like we do in this workshop, you can take certain measures to make sure that like they don't decimate you. So we always pull in practices at this 3-point to help us remember our aim. And in the 4th way, you call these practices super efforts. And super efforts get really addictive. All my earth signs in the house are like, I'm going to continue these super efforts for 120 days. It's like, no, baby, it's okay. We'll just do our 40 days. But yeah, we're going to work. Then the 6th point is always related to the will of the event. So like, why do you want to be like, why are you doing this whole thing? In this metaphor, like, let's say it's to step into your role as a teacher. So the teacher, it's called the will of the event. It's also the space of the desiring force. This is where the reason why you're doing it. And we talked about this in the book as well. Also, just to put it in magical terms for you guys. So like the whole Enneagram would be representative of sex magic, because sex is meant to be the same thing as love. Love being what the whole universe is held together with. This is also called the face of God. The face of God would be love. Now, in God and in love and in nature, there is chaos and order. There are 3 forces that all kind of pull in their own direction to create a tension that makes life appealing. Like if we only had nice things, things would be really boring. If there was only one choice and it was the right choice, you wouldn't have free will at all. So we could call the whole Enneagram sex magic, but within that, we would have these 3 lines. And this is the first that you guys are going to hear about the significance of lines as opposed to just points. Now, I had to make a very difficult choice for this one. Was I going to teach you guys about the points, or was I going to teach you guys about the lines, because both are so important? I'll show you guys the lines on the 3, 6, 9, but we'll only have time to do the points for the rest of those things. And that's what I promised here. So that's what I'm going to deliver. But if we were to look at things in magical terms, white magic says, according to your faith, be it unto you. You have the faith that you can manifest $1 million. Wonderful. It's yours. Well, unfortunately, this is only a third of a magical process. But this line from here to here that connects the 0 point or the 9 point to the 3 is the line of white magic. So every point that is involved with the path of this line will be in regards to your will and your faith, and using that to create what it is that you want to create. Then we have the line that runs from point 3 to point 6. And these 2 points down here that run along this line are related to the journey of black magic. And black magic is, according to your fear, be it unto you. So it's actually just the opposite of white magic. So a white magician would say, I'm going to put this thought in your head. You can do it, and it's going to grow like wildfire. The thing is that there's never 2 forces, white and black, for anything. And every action creates an equal and opposite reaction. So if they say, I'm going to put in this belief that you can do it, black magic will naturally occur at this point, the fear of I can't do it. Now, if you were to make black magic the active principle, as you can see here, it's in the passive space, which means that this is not what we're presenting to people. It's not how we're starting any mission. You can definitely, with the Enneagram, for whatever result you want, you can move things around, but you will see on paper how that result is going to go. For people who are here to use black magic actively, I have been this person before. Someone had to see if it worked. It does not go very well. but it's so nice using it as self-defense. I swear, when people are accusing you of being a witch, it's so fun to scare them, but it ultimately doesn't work. And it does create that equal and opposite reaction. But black magic would be putting an idea in somebody's head that you know will grow like wildfire. So you could tell someone you're going to have a really hard time having babies. And that could just fucking grow in their head, right? And they're always seeing more evidence to support it, the same way that white magic works, but instead of according to your faith be it unto you, is according to your fear be it unto you. And so both of these work the same way. Now, your fear, your limitations, you need these fears, because to think that you can just focus on the positive mental attitude and that exact thing is going to manifest, it's like, no. That's not how it works. It would be really nice if that's how it works, but it's just not how it works. Your fears and your insecurity, like for example, let's say you say, I'm going to make $1 million selling $5,000 products. And your fear is that nobody I know can afford a $5,000 product. That shit is useful. That shit is useful. Just because you don't make $1 million on $5,000 products doesn't mean you're not going to make $1 million. But if you just ignore that fear and say, okay, no bad news here, straightforward, you need this black man. You need to look at your fears. They shouldn't run the show, but they're limitations. And this point on the triangle is always in regards to our limitations. So these 2 points that connect with this line from 3 to 6, this is the line of black magic. And understanding what the lines are kind of help you to understand the theme of where you are right now, the moment that you're in right now, because there'll be many different tasks at a certain line. There'll be many different tasks because that's the theme of what you're working with right now. But at the point, these are the points. It's a very specific thing that you're doing. So for good creation, it's like, I'd say maybe 20% execution, 80% mental. The lines help you understand what you're doing mentally, and the points help you understand, this is my to-do list. I have to do this task at this point to equal the result. So when you're teaching things to other people, we're only ever going to be taking them through chronological time. Now, because this is teaching you guys the Enneagram, I'll teach you how to go forward and backwards in time. But when you're running, like I have my other workshops that all run on Enneagrams, and what we have to do is we just have to work through it chronologically, because you're here to hold the big picture for your students, but they'll just get overwhelmed if you're bouncing them all around. So in order for things to get done, in order to lead people well, in order to make sense to humanity, we need to travel a nice straight line. And the points are the Enneagram, are what allow us to travel a nice straight line. So then we get to our final line here. And our final line here is the line of red magic, blood magic, which is not about blood. You know, you don't need blood to do blood magic. Doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt. Ladies, we have a menstrual cycle every month for this exact purpose. So, and everybody knows that like things are real thin. The veil between the worlds is real thin during that time. But this is why, you know, women used to be the timekeepers, women used to be the goddesses. I'm not saying that like we have to get back to that, but your period was not considered a disservice until the books wrote it that way. But blood magic is all about surrender. It's all about surrender. It's all about sacrifice. Now look, the reason why this line is this way is because you don't know what the fuck you want. You don't know what you want. You think you know what you want. You don't know what you want. So no matter how good your will was from the beginning, and yeah, you wouldn't do anything if you didn't have the will to do it. But at some point you have to surrender, and not at any old point. At this specific point, you have to surrender your plan. You have to say this or something more. And you have to put something up on the altar. You have to say, in order to be, your next level costs you this level. Your next level costs you this level. So if you're not prepared to put the creature comforts of this level up on the altar to go to the next level, Like, it's just not going to happen. And they don't tell you this, in like the world of white magic, and they definitely don't tell you this in the world of black magic, but this is a very real thing. I don't know if you guys like watching Twin Peaks, but there's the White Lodge and the Black Lodge, and then the Red Room where members of the Black and the White Lodge both have to like agree, where they both people from the White and the Black Lodge, whether you're doing white magic or black magic, you're gonna have to surrender. Now, black magicians that are doing it actively have this idea that you can sacrifice something that is not your own. Like, you could sacrifice something that's not yours, or something that isn't yours. It doesn't have it's artificial magic, and it'll only ever work for the short term. A good example of this would be Hitler trying to get ahead with magic by sacrificing the Jews as opposed to the Germans. Ideally, no one would be sacrificed, but that's just how wars are. Wars are blood magic or blood sacrifice. And him sacrifice, like, this is kind of a weird, here we are talking about World War II, but the genocide of the Jews, he called it the final solution, because he had tried sacrificing, like, so many Germans died before they started killing off the Jews. And he was like, I don't understand why this isn't working. So that whole concept was called the final solution, to bring up the biggest, he was a big occultist. You guys can look this up. I'd had a lot of boyfriends that were like World War II obsessed. So like, over the course of my life, like, for somebody that grew up in a doomsday cult, I know a fucking awful lot about World War II and the occult side of it. But that was his thing, is like, I can just put up the biggest blood sacrifice anybody has ever seen and get the reward. And it just doesn't work if you are not sacrificing something that is yours and something that belongs to you. And so that had the complete adverse effect. People that are doing black magic now, like openly, they are are aware that what they're doing is wrong by the white magic book, and that it'll only work for this immediate thing. But they're choosing to be that kind of person. They're like, fine, then I'll be what they call the Antichrist, or I'll do it this way. And they're cool with that. Like, what we're ultimately here to be, like, the spiritual path is not the path of right and wrong. The spiritual path is the path of the observer, where we don't get sucked into this trap of saying, well, you're going to hell for doing that, and you're going to heaven for doing that, because you end up spending your whole life waiting to see if people really go to hell like they should. And the observer is like, Hitler was happy with the way that things turned out. And I mean, I don't know. I've literally never thought about or talked about this before, but he knew what he was fucking doing, and it sucks. So, but it didn't work. Like, if I were to say, did that work out the way, like, Hitler ended up killing himself in his bunker and everything went to shit, like his plan for like Germany the Great, and Germany has ended up with like so much shame and paying reparations and basically apologizing forever and ever because of this atrocity that happened. So instead of making Germany like the proud nation that he had set out, like, I would say that didn't work. But I don't know Hitler's mind, maybe he was happy with how it went. I'm just here to observe. But that would be an example of sacrificing something that isn't yours. I always get, my insecurity wants to come up and be like, don't talk about World War II. You don't know what you're saying. Every time it comes out of my mouth, I'm like, what's going on here? But I prayed that this wouldn't be a thing that came up. So, but we have those 3 lines of magic. And then all of that together is sex magic. And sex magic is called that, but it was called that because it used to be that sex was the expression of love. It was a ritual that was only being done to show 2 people behaving as the one God. So when you bring the masculine and the feminine together in an act of love, that creates, like, that's what God is. Like how I told you guys before, if you put your body demonstrating the laws of the universe, you master that law. Well, if you master being the God, the masculine, the feminine together in love, creating, then that's for real, the strongest kind of magic there is. But within that creation process, There is will, there is fear, and there is surrender. And keeping those all in the right point is what makes that magic real complicated. So here's the other points, and we'll go through this not too fast, but I don't see it taking too long. So this point on the Enneagram here, we start at 0 and not at 1. So 0 is at the top, point 1 is right here. And point 1 is always the point of intention, always the point of intention. So at this point, you are always, the first point is about deciding this is what I'm going to do. The next point is always about setting the intention. After that, now, what I make all of my clients do is that in order to set an intention and make sure that we've set the intention correctly, we go forward and backwards in time. We check the math of the Enneagram. Always. So that's session 2 in our Enneagram workshop. After session 1, intentions, we are always at point 2, and point 2 is tools. Point 2 is always tools. So you have the intention of what it is that you want to create. You're clear about that. You say, okay, cool, I am moving forward. The next thing you're going to need to do is collect your tools. So let's say that it's, I want to become a teacher. I want to step into my power as a teacher. The tools here would be like, okay, what's your curriculum? What is your curriculum? Like, what are you here to teach? What are your flaws? Those are actually your gifts. What platform are you going to do it on? What schedule are you going to do it on? How will you be distributing this information? And what information is it that you're putting out in the world? So after intentions at point 1, always comes point 2, which is tools. We're going to skip past the 3 and go to point 4. Point 4 is always limitations. Always limitations. So after whatever needed to go passive went passive, now you have the real ass problem of like, okay, so all of my friends have bailed on me. I am insecure, struggling, and I need money. So what the fuck do I do now? And limitations create style. Like, for real, limitations create style. Who here finds that they make the most creative meals when they don't have hardly any groceries in the fridge? Yeah. So your style really comes, your limitations are here to help shape your unique style, for real. And so when we change the way we view limitations as like, these are a sign that I'm going in the wrong direction, we're here to be water. Water just goes around it. Water just goes around it. And that creates that unique path. So, but after we set whatever needed to go passive, when we say, okay, raw steak, you're getting cooked and you're never coming back from this. You are a cooked steak now, teacher. This is who you are from here. And it doesn't matter if anybody else said, but I like you rare. It's kind of not coming back. So this is after that point always comes the limitations. Now, after the limitations, and remembering that these reside on that line of fear, on that line of black magic. So your limitations are all of your fears. And then we get to point 5, and the point 5 is called the point of most attention. I call it the point of no return. This is where you actually have to put some skin in the game. So the first half of the Enneagram is all related to like laying the foundation to support the next level, cleaning up any inconsistencies on the ground floor. And if we think about this in relation to white magic, it's like that whole line of white magic is just in regards to preparing the foundation to receive the next level. You can sit in Kundalini yoga doing white magic all you fucking want, but all you're ever doing is preparing the foundation, because it's not teaching you how to address, how to build on top of that. You've got the most perfectly prepped foundation ever. You've got the most perfect mindset ever, but you're not building anything because you're not assessing your fears and you're not surrendering either. So nothing is, that's all just going to be the prep stages. And you need the prep stages. You absolutely do. But you need them 1/3 of the time, and you need those other 2/3 as well. So after point 4 of limitations, we're always at point 5, which is the point of no return. At this point, you are making the damn thing. You are opening the, you are saying, okay, this is launching on this date. My restaurant is opening at 6 p.m. We will be serving cooked steak. This is, at this point, You are invested. You are headed into the future. There is no looking back. And this is always, so like I'm working Enneagrams with so many different people, but once I launch that my workshop is open, I've made the web page, I'm saying, okay, I'm open for early bird. I don't know. I have to now enter the line of surrender. I have to now enter the line of surrender. I don't know how many people are showing up. I don't know how much it's going to pay me. I don't know how I'm going to get, generate these leads or whatever, but I'm making the sales page. I'm putting it out there, trusting that the steps will arrive as I need it, but also committing that I'm going to do it regardless of the outcome. I used to not take this step, you guys. I used to say, like, I will do it for a minimum of 50 students, but it's not going to be worth my time. It's not my time. This is God's time. We're all here sharing this moment together. If this was my time, I'd be showing you guys my dance moves. But we are here, to learn and grow together. And it's not for me to say, well, I'll do it if it serves me to this caliber, but if it doesn't, I'm not doing it. I can address that a little bit, my fears, my limitations, my point of no return. I can say, I can run the numbers for sure. How many do I have to sell at this price point to equal this thing that I'm trying to achieve? But when it's go time, I have to surrender that. Yeah, I have to. And I tried not doing this. And I literally, those of you that have been following me for a while, I was at like a full standstill from June of 2021 all the way up until I ran Wheels Reinvented again. So June of 2022, a total fucking standstill in business, but not fucking standstill meditating. Probably no, baby, publicly fucking this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And every single plan just like falling flat, because I was trying to buy a house, and all the houses were like fucking millions of dollars because of the housing bubble. And so I was like, I can't do these workshops because I'll sell all of my time and then I won't. And if they don't give me the paycheck that I believe I need to buy a house at the wrong moment, then I shouldn't even do the workshop. So by refusing to surrender, I ended up just having like a very difficult, very draining, and like TBH, like embarrassing year. So don't forget that line of surrender, y'all, because I will not. It's tattooed on my hand, but I find a way to forget. But you always have to surrender. And that's why I don't do things now, just jumping into it without, if I'm serious about doing something, I do an Enneagram on it and I start following the steps, because I can handle so many projects at once. My one-on-one clients, they get to pick 7 big goals with me. And one of them is a mandatory resting, but I can absolutely know that where one coach might be like, I'm going to get you this one big result and it'll be so worth your money, I can do 7 times that for my client without ever feeling overwhelmed or anything, because it's just, I've just got my clocks up for them. We're just following the steps. And because we're doing them all at once at this time, we'll do one thing affects the other, affects the other, affects the other. And when it's not resting on my shoulders, it's resting on math, it's resting on a strategy. Like, I'm just not fucking insecure about it because I know it works. And that's fine. But dude, I'll tell you, when we hit point 3 with my one-on-one clients, and you've got all 7 fucking goals hitting their limitations at the same time, it gets hairy. It definitely gets hairy. So point of no return is where you are now invested in it. And it's where the line of surrender starts. And you say, okay, at this point, I have to surrender to God and go forward doing it anyways. And then on the line of surrender, we actually have the most fun. We get to this point over here, which is point 7 on the Enneagram. And point 7 is presentation. I love the line of presentation because finally we get to launch. We get to it's the most fun. All of this work, everything that we've been doing behind the scenes, finally we get to show it to the world. We get to reveal it in some way. And yeah, ideally we put down our sacrifices right before at point 6. And so when the inevitable, you present something to the world, some people are going to love it. Some people are not going to love it. But when you know that that is coming and you've put your spiritual reinforcements in, it's just it just washes over you. And after that, we have point 8, which is retention. And retention is so important because this is a moving wheel. let's say that it was to step into your power as a teacher. Well, good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better and your better is best. So when you've completed the one cycle, you want to go to the next level, and we just do the same thing over again. Now, when you run a wheel multiple times, with time, all you have to do is show up for the 369, show up for the shocks to make sure that things keep moving and don't go off key. And you can run so many projects, you can, while still getting the same results as if you were showing up for the full to-do list all the time. A good example of this would be setting a workshop passive. So the first time you have to film this, like what I'm doing here, this first workshop, I shoot it live. I write the book. There's a lot of questions and a lot of data, but after the first round, we have case study videos, we have the textbook. All of the limitations of it have been supplied via Q&A, which in this workshop, the replay game is really, really strong in this workshop because I attend hardly anything live unless I'm teaching it, of course. But you get access to my private Slack. You get to hang out with the Wheels grads for a couple of weeks before they go on their way. But there's always a Q&A thread. And so as you have questions, and most of y'all's questions are going to be related to, like, is my math right here? So you can submit your Enneagrams here so I can look at it and tell you, I think this is off here, or whatever. But you have I answer these questions on Tuesdays, every Tuesday, even though we meet every other Tuesday. So you can put your questions there and I will answer you right there in the Slack on a Tuesday. You don't have to be there live to get assistance. So after the first round, which would be, I'm going through every step of the Enneagram for my personal process, building a new digital workshop. But the second time that I do it, I don't need to be, because I already have the recordings for it. So I might have to do another round where I make sure that, maybe just adding Q&A at the 3, 6, and 9 points. But then after that, I have something that is set in motion. I don't have to keep on showing up for it. All I have to do is sell it at this point of the year. But as far as like the actual workshop itself, that is now running, that is now going. And I had a whole career where I didn't have my workshops on Enneagrams, and I could never effectively set these workshops passive. I thought that maybe it was a money block or something, but I would basically, because I didn't know, like I use the metaphor of the biscuit recipe, I didn't know that if I just include these 10 ingredients, it'll technically be biscuits. So I was like adding all ingredients, and then people would do the workshop and not get a result. And I'd be like, fuck, like I must have missed a spot, but I don't know where. So I would just keep adding content. And I see this a lot of times with like digital workshops where they just keep adding content until you're selling someone something that's like 60 hours of Zoom calls. And it's like to accomplish one thing. And I know that this isn't important to a lot of people, but it's really important to me as the sole breadwinning mom, where freedom is like my ultimate value. I don't want to take up a lot of people's time. Like, I don't want you to have to spend fucking 60 hours with me to get a result if it can just be bam, bam, bam. So I'm really grateful to have found this teaching, because I can finally set these projects passive, because I know that it's not, magic doesn't discriminate. You do the work, you get the result. You do the work, you get the result. And that is just that. So point 8 is the line of retention, and that is ensuring that the results that you've worked so hard to achieve will not be limited to that round only. You take specific steps, for example, collecting data from your customers. How could this be better? That you then feed into the next level. So on all of my workshops, I include an extra, like we do, because it's 0 and 9. So I give you a lesson 0, and I also give you a lesson 9, starting that next level off for you, so that you'll already have momentum. Once you decide, and this top one here, the 0 and the 9, this is about deciding. When you decide, I'm going to do this, the whole universe rearranges to support that. But so many people say, I decide, take no action. They don't really decide. Like, the thing about doing a magical process is like, This is not a fucking joke. Like when you decide that you're going to do it, there's no going back. So like the fucked up thing is like, if you decide to give up at point 3, let's say that you decide to give up at point 3, where it said, oh, who am I to teach? You don't go back to square one. You stay in point 3, downward spiraling, who am I to teach, until you get over that shit. Now, the good news is that when you get over that shit, you pick up where you left off, but you can spiral down infinitely until you're like, I've had enough of this limiting belief. I will do whatever I need to do to crawl my way back up so that I can meet limitations, but you can't go backwards once you start. And this has been, you're gonna want to quit at point 3. Like it's gonna, when we're taking out all of the, like we will be showing up for difficulty at the scheduled time. When we undertake a magical process, like these things are going to happen at these moments, but I'm telling you, your success is going to happen at that moment as well. Not at the moment where everything's hitting the fan, but when we work our way around the Enneagram, it's guaranteed. It's math. It just works. You do the steps, you do the results, you get the results, but it is intense to only focus on the action. So I can save you a lot of time, but when it's work time, like be ready to work because it's going to happen. So that is everything that I promised to teach you guys. This workshop is open only for, I'm going to show you guys the Enneagram of setting a goal. I guess I have my little note here to answer the most frequently asked question. But this workshop is only, we're already beginning. This is the orientation call. You haven't decided yet, so don't worry about being in a forward moving Enneagram. But October 11th, 1 week from today, this same time, we are showing up to do the first step. And you can 100% be a part of this if you want to. If not, seriously, no worries. There is, I'd say, a 70% chance that this is the last time I'm teaching it live, because now that I've seen the formula of writing a book, peer reviewing it, testing it, all of that, I don't need to do multiple rounds of case studies. But if I decide that I do need to do multiple rounds of case studies, I'll do this live workshop again. But I have so many workshops that I want to create. So I have learned from my first career that it's, for the most part, the first round is good to go if it's held up by objective math. And so I change my mind all the time, but my intention, I am writing the book this round. I thought that maybe I wouldn't write the book this round and just guarantee that there would be a second round with case studies. But I like writing a book every 10 weeks. It feels, I'm a mom. So like a lot of times it feels like my destiny is slipping away from me because my kids want me to make them food, or something. And I'm like, no, I was going to work. But having a tough deadline for a book, like it feels really good to complete a book every 10 weeks. And so I'm going to definitely put myself through that again. And that means that the chances of running around another round are pretty small. But that's basically that. So you guys go to mommyonami.com/Enneagram if you want to buy, and that's it. I can't wait for my books, honey, plural books. I've got so many. So I've never done, and that's it. That's my launch pitch. I'm going to send you guys literally 2 emails. Here's the thing. I read in my book on influence that like one of the main psychological triggers for people to buy is that like this deep rooted belief that we have that like, if I need to see you guys all when I say this, but there's apparently this super rooted belief with people that that expensive is better. Expensive is better. Expensive is better. Look at all these hot guys with their shirts up in here. That expensive is better. And this furry little cat tail or dog tail over here that I didn't know what was going on Nicole's thing. I said, what's this over here? I'm like really about making things cheaper nowadays. And the reason why is because when something is good and it's also cheap, I'm like, ugh, like I love it so much. I love it so much. Like I use the metaphor of like an Indian restaurant. Like when I go to an Indian restaurant and the food is so good and then I get the bill and it's like $20, I'm just like, it makes me feel this way of like naughty and delighted. And I don't care if it's like right or wrong or salesy or not. Like I just loved fucking feel this way. And my aim is to continually make things less and less expensive for people. So I'm the average price of things like this in the industry, because I've done my research with Fourth Way, totally different thing. I paid 15 grand for 6 months of 2 sessions a month with a Fourth Way teacher. And that was in 2020. I know for a fact she charges 50K for the same service now. Traditionally, Fourth Way always cost you 10% of your yearly income. That was always, and everybody paid the same, but it was 10%. And that's a lot. I don't know if you guys have ever like allocated 10% at the end of your bills, but it like fucking adds up. Now, in my past career, I always charged between 2,500 and 3,333. Oh, angel numbers, you know. But that was just my past, but I'm doing a lot better in my career now. I have like savings for the first time in my life. Yeah, I sold my house, so I don't have a house that I own anymore, but I just want to charge a lot less for things now. And when I'm not doing things with live time, I can charge a lot less for it. So that's what it's $1,000, and there is a payment plan on that. Next round, I'm not sure how much it'll cost, but there will always be an option going forward in my workshops to just get the book and try and hack the system on your own. And the book will be priced like a book, like $20, $30. So I'm going to continue to bring these offerings to the world, but there is, without going too deep into detail, for these second level teachings, there's magic that happens when you're in a room with the teacher, hearing their voice, and also to be able to, you can't ask a book questions. So if you have questions, especially like mathematical questions, it'll be nice to get this information in. But if you're like, I'm not good at math, I really want you to understand that it's not about the math, it's about the shape. So if you're the type of person where you can, like, if you see it, you can reverse engineer it in a way, or like if you taste it, you can figure out what's in it, or if you hear it, maybe you can play it. This isn't calculating. We won't be using calculators ever. And that's it. The only time we would use a calculator, I already told you guys in the book, just to find out how to draw the shape. You just need to try to divide 1 into 7 so that you get that number 142857. And that's how we draw the Enneagram. So what should I do the Enneagram on, you guys? Let me just look in the chat. Does anybody have I'm going to try and aggregate the questions in here. But does anybody have a question or anything about the question I've gotten most is like, what if I don't have a goal? What if I don't have a goal? So I'm going to try to put, I don't have a goal in the Enneagram, but I'll pull up the chat here so that I can see. Yeah, I love shapes, but math is a no. And yeah, and with shapes, if you're ever feeling like you're stuck in a conflict, seriously, just make your hands in the triangle. Make your hands in a triangle right now. And when you feel the way that everything kind of lines up and just connects easily like that, you will be reminded that there's a third force. Conflict are these 2 points, just a triangle distributes weight evenly. If there's ever a conflict, the weight's not being distributed evenly. But if you know that there's a third force, at the right time, things will come. It's not to you to dissolve the conflict anymore. So let's look at some of these. One of my goals is to cultivate a daily meditation practice in preparation for a week-long Vipassana retreat. So something that's cool about that is like when I'm doing 6 goals, 6 plus a rest day goal for my clients, some of these goals we'll talk about this in the Enneagram workshop. At the points 3, 6, and 9, we have what are called side octaves. So basically in order, so let me just put this in terms, absolutely simple terms. For this woman who says the goal is to cultivate a daily meditation practice, I would say, cool, we're not going to do that first week. But when we get to that point over here on the 3 where things are going to get sticky, it'll be necessary for us to complete mini goals, which are what we'll call super efforts, to make sure that this transition is seamless. So at this point 3 would be a really good time for you to do 40 days of that daily meditation practice. We'll achieve that goal super fast, faster than our long-term goal. And that will support you in stepping into your role as a teacher, or because I'm guessing that the week-long Vipassana retreat is for a bigger purpose or a greater destiny. But you would also be able to take that week-long Vipassana retreat and look at it at an Enneagram and know exactly the points where you would want to give up, and be able to bring little things in, like, for example, remembering your aim and like why it is that you're there to do that. Or maybe you have a new type of breathing technique or some other spiritual exercises, like objective prayer, where you line up all the happiest moments of your life and then just replay them for shifting your state really fast. If you know the points where things, but even just knowing the points where things are going to get hard and recognizing it's supposed to get hard here, it's not a sign that I should give up. From 0 to 7 figures annually is the goal. So what I would do, there's going to be a lot of people with this goal of like make $1 million, is probably going to be like the most popular one. What we can achieve is developing your $1 million product. It does not mean you're going to be getting a paycheck for $1 million that first year, but it means that we can conceptualize and start to build what of your services could go the long way. So the success like that happens in 3 stages. We talked about this yesterday in our final call of wheels. The first stage is going to be like developing the curriculum. The second stage is developing the curriculum is like kind of the messiest one, like figuring out what you're here to teach and going through all these, like this unsorting process of what's true for you and what isn't and what needs to go. And A Course in Miracles, they say this does not need to be painful, but it usually is experienced this way. You're like, oh, thanks. But that first, building the curriculum, the second stage of it is building the systems. And then the third stage of success, where you really start seeing paychecks, is when you apply budget and strategy to those systems. So let's say you build a curriculum, you make a subscription service, and then you use advertising technologies and other things like that to direct traffic to the system that works well. In that first stage, you would basically figure out everything that doesn't work and doesn't scale. But building $1 million product is really about having that long-term vision and not selling out all of your time, making sure that you keep time to the side that's just for the furthering of this goal. Transitioning from corporate life to independent passive business owner as the single breadwinner for the family, totally possible. So let's see. Why is the reflection? Oh, I love any question that's about narcissist and victim. Why is the reflection the neutralizing force between a narcissist and the victim? The reason why is because the reflection, whether it's coming from the victim seeing themselves in the narcissist, or the narcissist seeing themselves in the victim, the narcissist and the victim, it's a archetypal relationship, and the archetype is Narcissus and Echo. When something is an archetypal relationship, this means that it's programmed into your software. It's programmed into your software that you, like a robot, whether you like it or not, are going to fall for this archetype at some point. And the reason why you would fall for this archetype is because they activate in you exactly what needs to be activated so that you can come out of the role of the codependent. Narcissists attract codependence. So it's never just their fault. Like a regular person would not have an issue with a narcissist saying no to them, but a codependent like cannot handle the rejection. It's like, just give me a chance to change you. Just give me a chance to change me. And so you get enmeshed and you get stuck with them. Now, the best way to stop becoming a codependent is to give yourself the fucking Narcan to the heart of learning that you need to become like the narcissist, that instead of just blaming, and it's not adopting the worst qualities of a narcissist, but when you're a codependent, you could stand to look yourself in the mirror and say, I got fucking problems and I should be absorbed with myself for a while. And so the reflection, the narcissist needs to see themselves, it's understanding that it's the same energy, that the codependent has an equal measure of self-absorption like the narcissist. The codependent is so obsessed with how not a narcissist they are, and how, oh, the people like this should not exist in the world because this person is just so selfish. And it's like, you're actually just as in love with that concept of you as the martyr as the narcissist is of being the problem-free, the victimless. And they're here. And so what neutralizes that conflict is seeing themselves as equals. And truthfully, the codependent, the archetypal role of echo, is somebody that only feels complete when the echo has not learned to speak first. She really wants to talk. She really wants to talk like crazy, but cannot even open her mouth until somebody else calls first. She doesn't know how to initiate, and she really needs to learn how to do this. But I know what, I just want to say, like, I know what it's like to be a codependent in love with a narcissist, and like basically looking for his little broken piece so that I could install myself into his life, and then he would need me. And then if he needed me, he couldn't leave me. And it was like devastating for me to realize like that this person was just flat out rejecting me, even though he had initiated things with me. It was like really hard for me to accept that. But he symbolized success to me, and the narcissist that you're trying to get over symbolizes something to you that you are deluded into thinking you will not have unless this person is in your life. Like, they are showing you that you can cultivate this in yourself. I thought that if I wasn't with this guy, I would never be successful. So when he was leaving my life, I was like, oh, I'm never going to be successful. I was counting on this. But I developed it, but I had to become self-absorbed to do such a thing. So this is what we're going to do this Enneagram on. Let's do it just to see if it even works, because I don't want to promise anybody that they're going to come to the Enneagram and have $1 million product. So let's just make sure that it works. So when we're drawing an Enneagram, we always start off with the circle. And the circle represents time, and we're grateful for time. We're grateful. All things will be revealed in time. All things can be achieved in time. This is not something that we control. There is no unreasonable goals. You have zero unreasonable goals. The only thing that could be unreasonable is the timeline. All right. After that, we have the 3. And the 3, we figure this out, we can figure anything out. This is where we are most likely to get the math wrong, but this is where we get to test it out on paper and see if it actually works. Now, one of the main things that we'll get wrong is, and this is where the concept of magic is really important with this, is that, for example, we'll say, okay, I want to make $1 million product. And the reason why I want to do that is so that I can make $1 million. So the why of the event would be the 1 million. And what would go passive are the people that would be paying you those $1 million. Now, there's a few issues with this. If we put, let's see, we'll put C here for customer, this here for dollars, this here for market. If we have it set up like this, with the customer in the passive point, then the customer is coming in before the product is ready, which could work. You could have a list of, a lot of people waiting to pay you. And you're saying, okay, you guys tell me what you want me to create for you. But that doesn't always work. And then it's like you have to build that product for them. It can work, but the main reason why this wouldn't work is that when we're looking at the line of surrender, like real sales, real success, and to be able to duplicate this, is you have to solve a problem. Like, you have to solve a really big problem for your customers. And you can't just be like, I want to make $1 million, because you might be able to do this once, like to be the type of person. Like, I bought a workshop recently for $3,000. I kind of got duped into it. And it's like, all right, you won, no refund. Okay, cool. I get it. But I'm never fucking buying a product from this company again, like ever, because it fucking sucked. and it was expensive. And like, I love when things are cheap and good, but when something is bad and expensive, I'm fucking pissed. Like I'm so salty. I just like can't stop thinking about it. I need to let it go, but like, it's so much easier to let things go when it was only $20. You know, that was $3,333. I'm pissed. So if you want to be like Apple, where people are like standing in line to buy your product, you have to solve a really big problem for them. And one of the problems that Apple solved for people was like, technology is complicated. Like their whole thing was to make it so easy and like intuitive that a kid could do it. So if you want to really be able to access the power of that line of retention and be able to replicate these results, then it's really important that you go into this $1 million product wanting to solve a problem for the people. So how we would do this, but you know what I love about this is that the difference, so the Enneagram of like conceptualizing a product, you might have it set up like this, where you say, okay, I'm just going to get a lot of research from my customer, but then I'm going to flip it before I go past point 3. Before I go past point 3, I'm going to flip these, and I'm going to put the customer now in the active spot, and I'm going to put the money in the passive spot. I'm surrendering how much money I think it's going to make me, and I'm willing to put the customer first. Now, this is more of a corrective measure. This is me saying, like, I wouldn't plan on doing it and switching it up. And one of the benefits of being able to go forward in time is we can see where things would go wrong and fix it in advance before we actually embark on the project. But if you do, let's say that you were, because this has happened to me, you can recalibrate at these points. Like if something is wrong with your math, you will find out at point 3, and it's not too late to change it around. But you actually, if your math is wrong, you won't be able to go past point 3. And no matter how hard you try, you'll just get stuck there. So you can always, like I said, like black magicians would, I'm like lunar magicians, you know, it's like not this. If you ever hear anyone ever in life saying I'm a white magician or that's a black magician, just from this moment on, understand that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And seriously, if you ever want a real doozy done on your mind, go and see a white magician, because I swear to God, I saw one in New Orleans, and she told me that my guardian angel had left me and that a demon was guiding me at like an otherwise really like good time in my life. I had just seen Voodoo Daddy like fucking 2 seconds before, and he gave me the best fucking healing that I needed. But then I had this lady say, and I was vulnerable, right? I'm like sitting at her desk, and she took, now, how do you prove that? You know, like, so your guardian angel dumped you. What? I don't even know that I had a guardian angel, and now a demon's guiding me. Like, shit, now I need to find out if that's true or not. And wouldn't you know that she's like, yeah, but I can do this candle ceremony on you. And I knew that she was scamming me, but like, I was so afraid because no one had ever told me my guardian angel had dumped me before. Oh, I was so pissed at this white magic lady with her angel shirt on. Fucking got me again. I ended up like, she was going to do a candle ceremony on me and was supposed to bring it to me on Tuesday. And I ended up blocking her number on Monday because I was like, I cannot afford to hear whatever this lady is going to tell me, because she fucking fucked with my head. Oh, it makes me so mad. But you can switch things around. Like when I was building erotic wealth, I put the erotic on top to have it be the driving force of my life at that point, and put the spiritual to active. And that was literally a huge mistake. Like it went so bad. Like you can make something happen, but if you're not using that line of surrender, and if you're not really thinking about serving people other than yourself, like you'll get the result and you might hate it. Like I literally, my thing ended with CPS being called on me for smoking weed in Texas and like having to go through, and like it got so bad. And also like we were writing Erotic Wealth. And so I got in my first, it seems it's good as you guys are going to laugh hearing this now, but like we were writing Erotic Wealth. And at the time it was like helping people open up their marriages if that was something that they wanted to do. And now we've got the data on that. It's a no-go, but I ended up, we just like didn't have the right boundaries or anything in place. And it ended up with me and my boyfriend getting in my husband now, but getting in a huge fight because he wouldn't let me, he wouldn't let me be the dom to my ex-boyfriend. And I didn't understand why. Like so ridiculous looking on it now. Like, yeah, of course, that's not the way to do things. But at the time I'm just like screaming, why won't you let me dominate my boyfriend? And that ex-boyfriend was the narcissist that had like fucked with me for so long. So I really wanted to get even. And I know those of you who have ever loved somebody that couldn't give you the time of day, like want to get even. But for building this $1 million product, we're going to switch it around. We're going to put the customer over here. We're going to put the money passive where it's like, all right, now let's put the points on here. So we do 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, and then back to 1. We get those numbers from dividing 7 into 1. Now, let's see. So on the top, when it's building $1 million product, what is going to be the constantly cycling force? So the constantly cycling force is going to be the product itself, because once it's made $1 million, we want to make sure that it can make $1 million again. And so this concept of, let's say that you make $1 million product. After that, you're not going to I mean, maybe you'll want to just sell the same product over and over, but maybe you want to make another product, and maybe you need to find creative ways to keep making $1 million off the same product. Like, let's say you sold $1 million worth of product to your audience, but now you need to grow the audience to sell more product. So the cycling force is going to be up here, the product. And then the other 3 components, I'm just going to and not get ahead of myself and just work through this really slowly because my brain is starting to wrinkle. So making $1 million product, we have the product, and then we have the customer. And the customer, I'm pretty sure we're going to put at 6, but I'm just going to make sure that we get this math right. And then there is, the product is here, the customer is here, and then the selling of it is also going to be a thing. So I'm going to just try this and see if it works. I'm going to put selling here at 0.3. And I'm going to put the customer over here. Now, there's a chance that we might have to move things around, but we will find out on paper if this is going to work or not. So if I'm going from product, the concept of the product, to selling the product and then giving it to the customer, that doesn't work. And so now we have to explore this goal a little bit deeper, because am I trying to develop a product, or am I trying to sell $1 million of product? Because I care more about, we're going to have to start with developing before we can talk about selling. So let's put developing here. And let's see if this works. So we have the product as something that's always being recycled. We have developing in the passive stage, and we have the customer in the active stage. I think that this might work, and here's why I think it's going to work. It's always coming back to the product. The developing is not going to be something that it's literally passive. So if we have the math in the right place, then the development of this product would happen naturally. It would happen passively. It's right there in the black magic line. So as we hear people's fears and limitations about why they think the product might not be good, it would impact our developing. So let's say that like everybody's like, yeah, I'm just sick of products that are like this. I'm worried that I won't have the time to complete it. Because all of these things are happening right here in the development stage, instead of like dealing with all of that afterwards, we could deal with it before we've actually made the product. And then we have the customer coming in. Now it's a little different than seed launching because we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes before revealing it to a customer. And when it came to my process with building $1 million product, it really, I tried involving the customer earlier on and being like, tell me what you want to make and I'm going to make it for you. But it ended up just getting really disorganized because I didn't have a strong enough intention. I was really just trying to do what was going to make me the money, and filling the order out like that. It wasn't connected to what I felt creatively called to do. And so it just didn't really work. So, and then we have the customer coming in once basically everything has been built. So now let's put in these other points and just see if the math works, because if it works on paper, it'll work in real life. So we have intentions, we have tools, we have limitations, we have the point of no return here. We have the presentation, and then we have the line of retention. And the line of retention is where we look at data usually and see how we can make it better for the next round. And so let's see how this would work if we're going around in the circle. So usually first, before doing this, I would go forward and backwards in time, but we're not going to get into that because it's just too much to absorb right now. And I have to save some stuff for the workshop. So, so my intention would be, I'm going to make $1 million product. Then I would get my tools together. Where am I going to launch this? And then right here between developing and limitations is where this would just be market research. So I would, in a lot of ways, put down what I felt. I would really at this point go into all of the reasons why my customer would not buy from me and immediately start getting rid of those downsides. So those are like all the limitations. My customer has a budget like this, a time frame like this, and I need to deliver a product like this. Limitations create style. I'm developing the product here. Now, a big part of this developing would be running the numbers at this point and making sure that it's built to scale. So, and there are so many ways that you could sell a product that can only be sold once. And then it doesn't have the potential to grow to $1 million product, because it's just, if you ever had $1 million worth of sales of these things, it would fucking fry your entire system. So we would really, and this is why we have extra time here to really run the numbers, make sure that this is something that's not going to break down on you. We'll go forward and backwards in time a lot to make sure that everything's working well. But so far, this math does work. Then we get to the point of no return, which is getting ready for the launch. So putting the launch together behind the scenes. What's the offer they're not going to be able to refuse? How are we going to make sure that we're optimizing for conversion? How do we make sure that they're going to say yes? Like this is, and at this point, you might get your web developer involved. If it's a video workshop, you're shooting the video. There's like the actually putting together of it. And then the customer comes in. So yes, this does actually work. Then the customer comes in and the customer sees us fresh faced, not realizing that we've been like, woo, you know, we're like new product here. And what they don't see is that we were like, oh, for getting everything set up first. So the customer comes in, and a good example of this would be y'all with me. The customer came in, you guys came in because I gave you all a free book. And so, but now here we are at the presentation. So customer, how are we bringing the people in? And then you can present your cause to them. I have this workshop. Would you like to join it? And then once we're done here, once the launch is wrapped up, I'll run the line of retention and I will say, okay, did this make me $1 million? No. Okay, but what were my conversions? Like I had this many people on the list. I had 4,600 people on my newsletter list with no ads. That's like literally crazy to me. I've never, but that's doing aligned work. That's doing magical work. I'd run fucking $10,000 worth of ads to get 300 newsletter signups once. Like this fucking, I'm done with it. But I would look back and say, okay, so like 30% of people bought. So if I want to make $1 million on this, let's say 30% of people bought, that made me 400 grand. Then what I need to try and do next time is get 10,000 people on this list, aim for that same 30% conversion rate, and then I have $1 million business. So when we're doing this math and stuff together, like we'll clunk around with it in the beginning. Our first couple of sessions, we're going to have a nice full Q&A, but we will not embark on anything until we see that it works on paper, and then we'll move forward and backwards in time, make sure that there's no disaster that we haven't anticipated. And that's how we do that. I am not sure about this original one. They said, can I do the Enneagram if I don't have a goal? You could, but I really recommend just doing a different one of my workshops that'll help you get clear about your purpose. You can get all of my first level teachings for $33 a month. That's like 25 workshops. I'm not even kidding. When you go to mommyonami.com, just go to the Brew Report, and you can, finding your purpose, developing a business, going, from those baby stages to building it up, all of the marketing stuff that you need. It's from my first level of teaching. So it's not this level, it's the exoteric. It's me, good, bad, right, wrong, still figuring it out. But there's a workshop on there called How to Start a Business from Scratch. There's a workshop there called Empress that'll teach you like modern marketing. It mixes erotic arts and business tools, the masculine and the feminine. There is Breaking Broke to remove all your money blocks. And then there is literally so many archives, Q&As there. If you want my 60 hours of Zoom calls, baby, there it is. But if you want speed, efficiency, directness, this level of teaching, it's $1,000. There is a payment plan. I'm not sure if there'll be a second round, but that brings us to the end of our call today. So I want to thank you all. So her workshops are worth every penny. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. My goal is writing an album. So would my 0 cycle be the album? I would run 1 cycle on writing, recording, and then a cycle on releasing, or should it all be 1 cycle? Excellent question. It would all be 1 cycle. And so the first half of your Enneagram would be in relation to writing and recording, but here's the thing. It hits the way that you come to the writing and a recording of an album that you have already seen could make you $1 million. You will come to that with different energy. You will sit down like it's your fucking job. So like, this is why when people are writing books with me, I'm like, we need to go forward in future and see the success strategy for this without you being like, oh, I hope an agent's going to pick it up. Like, we need to guarantee that the book is going to be a success, because the way that you sit down to write your little project is different than the way you sit down to write that New York Times bestseller. So you sit down at that desk like fucking God sent you there. You know what I mean? You write that album like God sent you there to do it, because it did. It did, straight up. So if you guys have any more questions about the Enneagram or whatever, or buying the workshop, you can just send them to mommy@mommyonami.com. I want to thank you all so much for being here. It was really nice hanging out with you guys. I hope that to see you in the Enneagram. If it's not the right time for you, I totally get it. But if it is the right time for you, this is going to be one kinky trip, y'all. And the more that I run this workshop, the less physically present I'll be in it. So if we're speaking the same language here, even if it's a little bit of for you to go forward and do it, I hope you do. But if not, I will see you at another one of my workshops, because this is a taste like no other. Once you've got the taste for this pussy, baby, you just can't have anything else, you know? So I want to thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you very soon. 1 week open cart. I'll send you 2 emails, one the day that it's closing, one when there's 3 days left. And I'll see you on my newsletter. Love you guys. Have a wonderful day.